So in some of the questions, you might be given actually an equation, y in terms of x or x in terms of y. You can be given just like a normal function or a normal equation that you might have. Remember, you can, we actually going to talk about this part of the input and output values. This is the same situation that we are having on this type of a condition or questions. On this exercise, you'll be given a certain equation. If this y is equal to a certain equation, y is equal to 2x plus 3, y is equal to minus 3x plus 6, whatever that you're given, and you're asked to calculate a certain value given a certain condition, what are you going to do? Okay, just like what you're given on question number A, we are given an equation that is on A, we are given the equation of y is equal to 2x plus 3. Then the first question we are given to calculate the value of y if x is equal to 6. If x, you are given x is the one that you're given, that it is a 6. What is going to be the value of y? You do not know. What is the value of that? That is the question. Calculate the value of y. So it's a simple substitution that you are going to make into the equation that you are given. Y is equal to 2x plus 3. So in this equation, I'm simply going to substitute where there is x. I'm going to substitute the value of x that I'm given. So y is equal to 2 into x. That is 2x means 2 times x. 2 times x, that's 2x. Then whatever that I'm going to have, I'm going to add 2x, 2 times x. All right, so that's y is equal to 2 times a 6, which is going to give us a 12 plus a 3. That means y is equal to 15. So this is a typical question also that you are supposed to use your calculator in simplification, proving to see if your simplification is proper. You have substituted your values. Just check if this is correct. 2 into the bracket of 6 plus a 3. Am I obtaining a 15? Yes, that's it. So this is how you answer these typical questions. You just have to substitute whatever that you're given to find another part. All right, let's check on number 2. On number 2, on the same equation of y is equal to 2x plus 3. This time you need to find x given that y is equal to 9. If y is equal to 9, then what is the value of x? You do not know the value of x. It's just like those flow diagrams. You have an output value, you need to calculate the input value. So you can just substitute into the equation as it is. What you're given is the y value. So in place of y, you're going to substitute a 9. That means we can calculate the value of x from 2x plus 3 on the other side of the equation. So how are we going to calculate? Now it's an equation. You need to solve to find x. You have to solve for x. Solve for that x. That is the case. So how do I solve for x? We're back to our linear equation, those linear equations, no more equations. Remember what I said? You can transpose the 3 to the other side of the equation. The moment it crosses the equal sign, why are we transposing? There is another number there, a constant to a constant, numbers to numbers. The terms must remain where the other terms are. So there's just a single term where x is a term, where x is. So this number must be to another number. Those are the like terms. So meaning to say it's going to be 9. The 3 crosses or it jumps the equal sign. It becomes a -3, which is equal to 2x. That's it. So 6 minus 3, 9 minus 3 there, that's a 6, which is equal to 2x. So you can divide, since this is a product, remember the opposite is to divide in order for us to have the value of x. So this is x, 2 into 6, which is going to give us a 3, or 6 divided by 2, that's a 3. So that is the condition. So therefore, our x is going to be 3 when y is equal to 9. So we can even prove now to say if this x is 3, if we substitute here, because it's easier to prove from the input that we are given. X is the input, remember? X, like the input condition. So it's easier for us to prove from that way because we do not have like a lot of things to substitute there. Okay, what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say on this one, you can simply substitute in your equation. Remember, y is equal to 2x plus 3. So in place of x, we are going to substitute the x that we got, which is a 3. We want to see that if we substitute this x, which is a 3, y is going to be 9, the one that we were given in the original question. Is that so? So this is it. So that is to make sure your x value is correct. So this is how you're going to be solving these equations. You'll be given a certain value. So it's like you're just back to your normal equations, but just that they are going to be giving like y is equal to this or x is equal to this. Even on number 3, on the same equation, on number 3, we are given x to find, all right, to calculate the value of x if y is equal to minus 11. So what are we given there? It is the y value. So that is, we are given that y is equal to minus 11. So what is the x value? We do not know. So in place of y, we are going to substitute. In place of y, we are given that y is what? Minus 11. So that is minus 11 in place of y is equal to, as it is on the other side, 2x plus 3. So this is it. You are now solving an equation. Solve for x, because what you need is to have x. So you have to solve for that x. So let's solve. We can transpose the 3 to the other side, just like the previous case. It becomes a negative. So that's negative 11, negative 3, which is equal to 2x. Negative 11, negative 3, that's negative 14. Your calculator is there, guys, as a friend or as a guidance. Whenever you feel like your calculations are wrong, just check also with your calculator. Minus 11 minus 3, which is minus 14. So minus 14 is equal to 2x. So how do I find x? Divide by 2. Since the product, divide by 2, these cancels. So that's x is going to be negative 14 divided by 2, which is negative 7. Or on your calculator, just divide by 2. That's going to be a negative 7. So this is the value of x, which satisfies this equation when y is equal to what? When y is equal to minus 11. Our x at that condition is going to be minus 7. So that's the condition then. You have to be careful. Substitute properly. Solve for what you need to find. Is it for y? Is it for x? So you are given different equations, as you can see on number 3 or number B there. Just try as many questions as you can. All right, so I'm just going to try question C with you. On C, we are given that y is equal to x squared. Calculate the value of, all right, let's start with number 1. The value of y given that x is equal to minus 8. If x is minus 8, what is the value of y? So you're simply substituting y is equal to, in place of x, minus 8 squared. That is what it means. Minus x, everything. The x is the one that is being squared. So it means we square everything. So y is going to be negative. Remember, a negative, when raised to an even number, it becomes a positive. 8 squared, that is 64. Oh, your calculator is there, guys, to assist you like that. You can just use your calculator there. That's a positive 64. Calculate the value of x on number 2 if y is equal to 100. This time we are given the value of y to be a 100. So what are we going to do? If y is a 100, so it means 100 is equal to x squared. So if 100 is equal to x squared, what will be the value of x? Or the values of x? Can I say it that way? What will be the values of x? So how do we remove this square? No, whenever you see a square on x that you want to find, you introduce the square root. The opposite of a square, you introduce the square root both sides. By introducing the square root, remember the concept of a square root is 2 divided by 2. So you've neutralized this, you just have x. There you have the square root of a 100. And the square root of a 100, we think, okay, it's a 10. No. The square root of any number should be or must be a plus or minus. So that's plus or minus 10. So take note about that. meaning to say x can be a positive 10 or x can be a negative 10 to satisfy this equation. So there, be very careful on finding of the square root. Okay, so this was the same situation or same condition on the number 3. On the same question on number 3, we need to find x if y is equal to 36. If y, this one, is equal to 36. So 36 is equal to x squared. That is what they mean. So just like the previous case, to remove the square, you introduce the square root both sides. By just introducing the square root and the square neutralizes 2 divided by 2. That's x to the exponent of 1, which is just x. The square root of 36 plus or minus 6. That's it. So if you're using your calculator, be careful because your calculator does not give you that plus or minus. You're supposed to know that. All right? Because your calculator does not give you just, look, square root of 36. Your calculator does not give, it just gives you 6. It is you who is supposed to know that a square root, positive or negative. Once you know that, then you are good to answer any typical question on a square root. So I want you to answer as many questions as you can see on this activity. There are so many questions to be considered. Once you try them, where there's a challenge, let us communicate so that we can see how do we actually answer these typical questions that we have on this part. All right, so I want us to check on this G. If you check on G, we are given thus y is equal to x squared minus 4x. Calculate the value of, all right, let us start with number 1. Calculate the value of y if x is equal to minus 6. So we are given the value of x. We are given there, x is a negative 6. X is a negative 6. So what is the value of y? We are simply substituting into our equation. So y is equal to, in place of x, that's a negative 6 squared. Minus 4 times x in place of x, that's a negative 6. So that means y is going to be equal to what? Negative 6 squared. Remember, a negative when being squared gives us a positive. So that is positive 36. All right, minus 4 times a minus 6, that's minus times minus, that's a plus 24. So if you multiply 4 and 6, that's a 24. Then if we add these two, we were going to obtain a 60. If we add these two properly, we were going to obtain a 60. So that's it, just like that. It was just a substitution to be done. Now, on this other part now, this is what they are testing because they know that we have done this before here on this number 2 part. On the same question, but on number 2. The value, calculate the value of x if y is equal to 5 this time. All right, this one, y is equal to 5 on number 2. So what is the x values? Or the x value, do not know. Are they going to be? We're going to see what's going to happen with our equation. So we do not know this value, but what we know is that y is equal to 5. That is what we know. So if y is equal to 5, what will be the value or the values of x? We're just going to substitute. All right. So in place of y, they're going to substitute a 5. So 5 is equal to x squared minus 4x. If we are to take a closer look, we are solving for x, and this type of an equation is not a familiar equation. This is a quadratic, it's not a linear. It's not something that you are familiar to, like not on linear equations like what we have been expecting. These are quadratic equations now. Remember, how do you solve your quadratic equations? By factorization method. And in whatever part that you have, the format of a quadratic equation must be in this format. Ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. Ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. Meaning to say one of the sides must be equal to 0. In this case, we can see that this can take this 5 to the other side so that it will be x squared minus 4x. If we transpose this 5 to the other side of the equation. The purpose is to make sure that one of the sides is a 0. So if we transpose this 5 on the other side, it becomes a -5. So this is equal to this. But remember that also we understand that if A is equal to B, therefore B is also equal to A. It's just one and the same thing. So if a 0 is equal to this part, it also means this is equal to 0. So I can write it in a way that I understand. X squared minus 4x minus 5 is equal to 0. I'm not transposing anything. I'm not transposing any. I'm just writing this on the other side, this on the other side, just interchanging their side. I'm just taking this as it is to this side, this to this. So we don't transpose anything. If A is B, it means B is also A. Not minus B, not minus A. No, no. So there you are supposed to be very, very careful. So with this equation, remember how you solve your quadratic equation, because this is now a quadratic equation here, dealing with quadratic equation. And how do you solve a quadratic equation? By factorization method. You're going to need two brackets that we are going to equate to 0. Since there is an x squared, that means here it's going to be x and this is going to be x. Remember what I said, you are going to need, in this case, the factors, the products, which are the factors of this -5, which is a constant. So do we have factors in this case, or products of what? Products of -5. But these products, if you add them, they must give us this number that is multiplying x here. We must have this -4. Two numbers, that's what I'm trying to say. You need two numbers. Two numbers. You multiply two numbers just like this, 5 and a 1. If I multiply 5 and a 1 is what? It's a 5. But in this case, we do not need a 5. No, we need a -5. So it can be a -5 and a 1. Or it can be a 5 and a -1. These are the products. These are the factors. If you multiply these two numbers, you get a -5. But if you add those two terms, those two numbers, are you having a -4 if you add? That's the question. If you add these two numbers, -5 plus a 1, what do you have? A -4. 5 plus -1, if you add 5 and -1, that's a +4. We need those that when you add now the factors that of -5, but if you add those factors, you must get the number that is in the middle here, which is -4. So those are -5 and 1. These are the numbers that we need there. -5 and a +1. So you have to be careful now. You're back to your factorization there. Factorization of given quadratic expressions. So once you have got this, now we are back to the 0 concept. Now remember, when we talked about the 0 concept, the product of two brackets, this bracket, this bracket. So we're back there now. For these two brackets to give us a 0, it means either one of these must be 0. So it's either x -5 must be equal to 0 or x plus 1 must be equal to 0. So from this, I can solve for x. I need to transpose -5. It becomes a positive. +1, it becomes a negative. So x is going to be 0 plus 5, which is 5, or x is going to be 0 minus 1, which is -1. So this is the possible value. These are it's actually possible values. What we are seeing there, these are possible values of x. Possible, they are values of x. It's not just a single value, just like what we had on the previous case when it was just a single value. Here we are obtaining two values. So you see, there is a linkage. There's a lot of things here. The substitution part, which is fine. Forming of the equation. What type of an equation that you're formulating? You formulated a quadratic equation. know the format of a quadratic equation. It must be in the form that one of the given sides must be equal to 0. And I can factorize from there. So for x, from the zero concept, you're back again. There's a concept there. The zero concept, the product of two terms, two brackets, to be 0. One of the brackets must be a 0. That's it. Just like that. So these are the typical questions that you're going to have. Like I said, I'm not going to have all of these questions. I want you to try them where you see that, okay, this one is a challenging to me. Let me know about that question so that we can try have it together. So it was the same thing even on number 3 part when y is equal to 60 again. So it's still the same thing. Remember, it was G. Remember, y was equal to x squared minus 4x. This time, we need to find x given that y is equal to what? Y is equal to 60. So it's still one and the same thing, just like the previous case. Y is equal to 60. So in place of y, we are going to substitute a 60. So 60 is equal to x squared minus 4x. Transpose this, that's a 0 is equal to x squared minus 4x minus 60. I hope now you understand the reason. Why are we transposing these? Why are we even transposing? To make one of the sides to be equal to 0. And once you're at this stage, you can even write this side first to be equal to this side. So I can even write it that way. X squared minus 4x minus 60 minus, is supposed to be equal to 0. So how do I solve for x? I'm supposed to do that same factorization just like the previous case that we had. Remember, we talked of the factorization method where this is supposed to be x and also x, so that x times x, you obtain x squared. So like I said, you're supposed to focus on the constant, which is negative 60. We need the products there. The factors there are negative 60. What are the factors? What are the products of negative 60? Two numbers that you multiply, you obtain negative 60. But if you add these two numbers, you must obtain a minus 4. That is where you are controlled. It's not just to multiply and get a negative 60. No. After that, if you add, you must get a negative 4. After that, if you add, you must get a negative 4. So it's a trial and error where you need trifactors of negative 60. I can try. There are so many negative 10 and a 6. If I multiply this, I get a negative 60. 10 and negative 6. There is a 12. There's 60 and a 12. That's a 5. Negative 12 times 5, or 12 times negative 5. There are so many numbers, 30 and 2. If you multiply 30 and 2, so minus 30 and 2, or 30 and minus 2. All these factors, but as you are having your factors, just be close to the number. 60 and 4, 60. Guys, those numbers, they are close on 10 and 6. 10 and 6 is 10 and 6, there's a 4 there. 10 minus 6, there's a 4. So the possibility is on these two numbers. But we have to figure out properly how 10. Is it negative 10? Is it positive 10? But this is what you're supposed to do. You are supposed to list all the factors. Then on each, you start to add 1, 1, 1, you add. But as you do that, just be wise enough that you do not spend much time on 30 and 2. The difference there alone is like the gap is too much to get a 4. So to obtain something like a difference of a 4, the gap was just on 10 and 6. All right. 10 minus 6, that's a 4. But we need to know how this, so that it becomes a minus 4. Because if I multiply this, negative 10 times 6, that's a negative 60. 10 times negative 6, that's a negative 6. But the condition is when I add now, when I add this, where am I going to have a negative 4? Where am I going? And not a positive 4, as it is. So where? Okay, that's a minus 10 and a 6. So you can even just prove with your calculator, guys. Your calculator is there. On your calculator, negative 10 plus a 6. That's what? that's a minus 4. So this is exactly what we want. Okay, let's just work with the last one. The last one is 10 plus a minus 6. So it's a minus 6 like that. We get a positive 4, not a minus 4. So meaning to say this fails because it is giving us a positive as we need a negative. So these are the numbers that you're going to write in your brackets, the minus 10 and the minus 6 that you got. So in one bracket, a minus 10, another bracket, a plus 6. So we are now back to the zero concept where I said either one of these two brackets must be equal to 0. So it's either x minus 10 must be equal to 0 or x plus 6 must be equal to 0. So what is the value of x from the first bracket and from the second bracket? Transpose the negative 10, it becomes a positive on that side. That's 0 plus 10, which is a 10. Transpose the negative 6 on the other side of the equation, it becomes a negative. It was a positive, so it becomes a negative on the other side. That's 0 minus 6, which is a minus 6. So that is the case. These are the values of x that you are going to have if y is equal, y is equal to 60. So I want you to try and work out as many questions as you can. Be very careful in your simplification. These are equations. Try as many questions. I want you to try as many questions. Where there's a challenge, let me know about that so that we will work on that question as we move on. But for now, that's it till we meet again.